Good evening. I would like to call to order the February 3rd meeting of the West Sacramento City Council and the West Sacramento Redevelopment Successor Agency and West Sacramento Financing Authority. We'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, which tonight will be led by our new Director of Parks and Recreation, our first and only woman mayor, and of no relation to our city manager, Cindy Tuttle.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The council did not meet in closed session this evening, and that brings us to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the council. And the council is prohibited from discussing items not on the agenda brought to us at this time. However, this is an important opportunity for public forum, and we ask that if you would like to speak on this or any item, that you fill out a request to speak card that can be found near the door where our city clerk now is located, and hand it to her. We ask that your comments are kept to 3 minutes or less, and we accept cards up until the conclusion of the staff report. Or for our consent items, they would need to come to us prior to us taking that item up. The clerk also has a flip chart, and she shows the items on which we're discussing. So we'll make sure that we don't have someone who wants to speak with us right now. Yes? Okay. Good evening. Edward Castorilla? Oh, Castorilla? Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members.
Good evening.
What I want to talk about is concerning Bright Park. Our LULAC Council 3204 would like to know about the $2.7 million that Groupie had set aside for Elkhorn and Bright Park. We think there should be a report, and it should be made public to find out where that money went and the interest that it's accrued. And has it been 7 years? If you could answer that question, I know it's around that time. That's a long time, I think, to hold on money that was supposed to be spent. For the children of Bright and Broderick, because I know it concerns Elkhorn too, the way it was written. When is that money going to be spent? Where it belongs? The public needs to know what's happening. So I know Mr. Ledesma and Bill Christoph and Mr. Johansson, you say you represent the north side. Could you find out about that? I mean, I would be very grateful, and so would our council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward. That moves us on to item 1B, which is council communications. Council communications. Are there any reports to share? Mr. Johansson.
Yeah, thank you. The West Sac Housing Development Corporation had a half-day strategy session, and we went over goals and objectives and also looked at some succession planning issues. And also, one of the main points of discussion was how to build the relationship with Yolo County Housing, the county-wide needs, and how the separate entity, West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation, can maybe cooperate with Yolo Housing and some of the programs it has to further affordable housing in West Sacramento. And also, yesterday I joined the city manager and several department heads with representatives from the Siemens Company. And the focus of the meeting was to consider new technology that allows the vertical real estate of the city to be used for more than just streetlights. And staff is scheduling a follow-up meeting with Siemens with a focus on how the technology might advance the city's broadband strategy.
Thank you. Mr. Christoph? I'll fix this too.
Attended a meeting of Regional SAN on January 27th, and the main issue discussed at that meeting was solar energy. The project is going to be one of the largest projects ever constructed, and part of that large project is going to be the use of solar for powering some of the facilities that are necessary to handle the Echo Water project. Solar City was chosen as the company to build the solar panels, and so this is going to be something that saves, something that saves a lot of dollars as far as energy and things like that. Plus, we all know solar energy is very useful for generating power. And so that was one of the major items that we had for, excuse me, for the Echo Water project.
Thank you. Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you. Last Wednesday, the 27th, I attended the meeting of the city-county 2x2. In attendance as well were supervisors Oscar Villegas and Matt Rexroad, along with the county administrator and our city management team. Our city manager and assistant city manager were also there. The main topic was around planning, homelessness planning. It was a session where we discussed further efforts by the county, resources they were looking to make available on furthering, if possible, other homeless initiatives, such as we did last year with Bridge to Housing. So we had a good, robust discussion around possibilities, possible action items, and this will take some follow-up in the coming months, weeks and months, to kind of come up with a strategy from our perspective. But there's some good dialogue, and we'll try to keep that up with the city. That was the only item we had that day, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledesma. And I have a couple of reports. One was the Up for West Sac Executive Board met on January 20th. We received a program evaluation report. The findings are very positive for our Up for West Sac participants. And they had control groups that they were comparing the outcomes against. And these findings will be disseminated to the council in the near future, and that will share all the details. I think you will want to take a look at that and be proud of our program. We also heard that the city's preschool programs are fully enrolled, and we're applying for an impact grant, which will potentially provide 4 years of funding at $375,000 per year. We do continue to pursue other funding opportunities to support the program, and an item on our agenda actually tonight at council relates to administering that effort and moving grant and private support requests forward. Then the city school 2x2 was held this past Monday. We discussed the Summer Steps internship program outcomes, and Caitlin Miller from our HR department provided detailed background on the participation rates by many of our departments in the city. It was really impressive. She also shared that 454 applications were received and 22 interns were hired, with 11 of those being from Washington Unified School District. And our fire chief, who's here this evening, provided a briefing on the West Sacramento Fire Department Youth Fire Academy program, which gets underway in a few weeks. 14 academy participants will be in this inaugural cohort, with 12 of those being from Washington Unified School District. And we also discussed a number of career tech initiatives and opportunities for collaboration between Washington Unified School District and the city. It was a very, very positive meeting. And that's my report. That brings us on, we do not have any appointments this evening, so we will move over item 1C. And that brings us to the consent agenda.
Before we get there,
Okay.
I guess there's one thing I would like to say for Ed and the people at LULAC. Some monies were spent on the playground that was put in by Disney, and some monies I know were spent on the restrooms. And I'm sure that Cindy and I'm sure that our finance director will be able to bring forth a very good accounting of when that money was spent, where it was spent, what we have left over, and take it from there. So I just wanted to let you know that some things have been done. So anyway, but just so you know.
Thank you, Mr. Kristoff. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that council member has questions or comments on to pull? I do need to recuse myself from item 9, so I'm going to propose that we move forward with the consent agenda with setting aside item 9, and then I will hand over the gavel to, I think, Mr. Ledesma, if you don't mind, and then you can chair that portion, that item. So if that's all right?
That's fine.
No questions? Is there a motion to approve the consent, holding back item 9? Moved by Mr. Johannesson, seconded by Mr. Kristoff. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes. All right, I will hand the gavel to you, Mr. Ledesma, for item 9. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is item 9, it's still on the consent agenda, so unless there's any questions or comments from the rest of the council,
Move the item.
we have a motion and a second for Mr. Johannesson. I think he was.
Second, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of item 9, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. That motion, the item passes. Thank you. And I get to hand back the gavel from Mayor Pro Tem Sandin.
All right, that brings us on to item number 13, which is the
No,
continued.
Actually, we need
Oops.
to do the rest of the consent.
Oh, we did that.
We just did item 9.
No,
We did everything
okay,
but 9,
everything,
and then did
okay.
9.
Okay, all right,
Okay, I got it.
got it.
Is that an agreement? Everyone
Yes.
good?
Yes,
Okay.
that's-
So comes to item number 13, which is a continued public hearing and first reading of ordinance 16-1 regarding proposed amendments to Chapter 17 of the West Sacramento Municipal Code related to fuel stations in the waterfront zone. It looks like, Ms. Allen, you are presenting to us this evening. Thank you. There you go. That's on.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the council. This item is a continued item. The council originally heard it back in August. To recap, for those that might be listening, in December 2014, the council approved the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan, and part of that plan was a recommendation to make an alteration to the zoning ordinance to change the designation of fueling stations in the waterfront zone from a permitted use to a prohibited use. The rationale for that was that it would prevent land use inconsistencies with desired development types in the Pioneer Bluff area. The city council did hear this item back in August, and when the council heard it, they did have some concerns regarding a complete prohibition of fueling stations in the waterfront zone. Council felt that prohibition straight out would not allow for future expansion of potential non-petroleum-based fuels such as hydrogen, for instance, and would not allow for those type of uses to be swapped out with traditional petroleum fuels if they become available and viable. And so because of that, the council asked that staff return to Planning Commission and seek recommendations for revisions before returning to council. We did that this past September, And the Planning Commission's recommendation was to change the designation of fueling stations from a permitted use to a conditional use. A CUP was recommended by the commission because they felt that there would be locations available for alternative fuels, and as they become available, either at existing stations or new ones, that they wanted to allow for the ability for those new fuel types, whatever they may be, to have a chance to go into the Pioneer Bluff area. And based on the comments from the council in August, staff had also made a recommendation to the commission that there be an additional classification for electric vehicle charging stations. The commission, however, had some concerns about what actually constituted a retail charging station, and because of that, they chose not to recommend that item at this time. This is something, as we complete the general plan and we look at revamping the entire zoning ordinance, that we will look in the context of that. So that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Allen before we open the public hearing?
I may after, right? Thank you. Right now.
Okay. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. There are no requests to speak at this time. So I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion. Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, I think, thanks staff and the Planning Commission for coming up with this good solution. I think this allows us, even though it's not going to be an automatic for the swap over of different fuels in the future, it'll come back to us as a conditional use permit, which I think is probably a really good alternative. But thanks for that analysis.
Okay.
No, no, no.
I agree with you. I think it's a good solution, and I'm happy with the work and the progress. So with no further discussion, this will actually, it's a first reading, read by title number only, ordinance 16-1, amending chapter 17 of the West Sacramento Municipal Code related to fueling stations in the waterfront zone. And I need to inform you that the second reading and adoption of the ordinance 16-1 is scheduled for February 17th. So thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you. That brings us to item number 14, which is a public hearing in consideration of Resolution 16-2, approving a citizen participation plan for the administration of federal community development block grant funding. Hello. It's on still. Oh, now it's off. Now it's on.
Yeah,
You're good.
I have to lower it. Good evening. As the council is aware, the city has received Community Development Block Grant funding, known as CDBG, through the State Small Cities Program since, basically almost since we became a city. Last August, we received notification that West Sacramento has grown to the point that it no longer qualifies for the Small Cities Program and will begin receiving CDBG funds directly from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. This will begin July 1st, 2016. At the federal level, the goal for the CDBG program is to develop and maintain viable urban communities by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanded economic opportunities for persons from low-income households. As a condition of becoming a federal CDBG entitlement jurisdiction, the city must develop a citizen participation plan, a 5-year consolidated plan, and an annual action plan by May 15th. The first of these documents is here before you this evening, and that is the citizen participation plan. The other two plans, the consolidated plan and the annual action plan, require 2 public hearings. The first will be held before the Economic Development and Housing Commission, and followed by a second hearing before the council in late April or early May. The consolidated plan contains 5-year goals for the use of CDBG funds, and the annual action plan contains the 1-year funding allocations for our first years of funds. The citizen participation plan before you this evening outlines the process to be used for engaging the community in the planning, implementation, and assessment of CDBG-funded activities. And in particular, it's very important that HUD regulations require that the plan encourage participation by low-income persons and residents of lower-income neighborhoods. The plan before you has been reviewed by our HUD rep, and they do agree that it does meet the federal requirements. Outreach methods contained in the plan were developed with input from the city's Economic Development and Housing Commission and from the Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Commission. The member agencies of the Yolo County Homeless and Poverty Action Coalition reviewed the document, and yesterday staff received a letter of support from the HPAC members. The draft citizen participation plan was noticed in the newsletter and emailed to interested parties. The document itself has been available for public review for 30 days, both here at City Hall and at the Arthur F. Turner Library, and it was also available on the city's website. This concludes my presentation, and the citizen participation plan does require a public hearing prior to adoption.
Thank you. Are there any questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. Go ahead and open the public hearing. There are no requests to speak. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for discussion. Mr. Ledesma?
Oh, hi, Luis. Yes, just a couple of quick questions. Thanks for bringing this out, and I guess it is, could it be construed as good news that we're above the 50,000 population and can go directly from the federal government? First of all, it's my first question that we're getting.
The benefit of becoming an entitlement city is that we do not have to apply only for things that are competitive under the state program, but the city can develop its own
Right.
priorities. We can use the funds where they're best used and fit in best with our priorities in West Sacramento. So I think this is something we've been looking for a long time.
Good. I thought that was the answer, because I'm sitting here thinking about the past interactions with the state during the CBDG funds that we would have to get to, and some level of frustration maybe, or the constraints around that. So I took it as good news. I was just reviewing the plan, and the only, it's a good plan, and I appreciate the comments that came from the other commissions to reach out to the faith-based community and to others in the neighborhood about making sure we do touch base with them. And I would just sort of echo that sentiment. I know they had recommended that. I know we're getting the word out through, or would these be like public meetings and forums where people can come in and hear about the plan? And is that what's anticipated here?
Yeah, we use multiple modes, and that's usually what HUD recommends. We've already had some focus groups with interested members of the HPAC, the Homeless and Poverty Action Coalition. That occurred in December. We've had some one-on-one interviews with affordable housing providers, with legal services, and other individuals that work directly with low-income residents in West Sacramento. We are going to hold a meeting here around the last of February or first part of March with residents from the north side of town, which is generally one of our lower income areas, and it will definitely be CDBG eligible in most of those areas.
Right.
And group meetings with the faith-based and business community. So a combination of one-on-one interviews and focus groups, and then the public hearings, which are of course available for the general public.
Right, and you are, I think you said you are involving the chamber to represent the business community, because we do, I think one of the successes had been around the work you've done on the small business training. I think we have a training session coming up.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We just concluded one class in October, and we'll start another round of classes in first week of March, I think.
Right, so again, just if those are beneficial, to make sure that community is engaged, so we can prioritize accordingly as well. So that's the only comment I had around it, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledesma. Mr. Christoph?
Louise, has the development community also been contacted?
That is not one that we specifically called out. We were looking at chamber as a representative of the business community at large.
I probably
Um,
would reach out to some of the folks in the development community. I mean, quite frankly, they're the ones building this stuff, so I think their input would be very good.
The citizen participation plan is our statutory required minimum, so we can always contact more agencies beyond what our plan says. We just have to make sure that we at least hit the minimum in the plan. So we could certainly do that.
Well, okay, I mean, I still think that'd be helpful.
Mr. Johannesson?
So Lise, the additional plans that are mentioned in the report for public hearing requirements would be the consolidated plan, the annual action plan, and consolidated annual performance and evaluation report. So you're saying this is the minimum, we don't necessarily have to do those? But
The HUD minimum is, the public hearings that are in here are the HUD minimum. We can do more if we wanted, but we're meeting the HUD requirements with this.
In terms of the documents that are going to be produced, so are those the 4 documents that are, we've got the citizen participation plan, but what is the consolidation plan?
The consolidated plan is a 5-year plan. It analyzes demographics and needs within our community, and then looks at the types of outcomes and goals and outcomes that we'd want to achieve over a 5-year period. But it is called consolidated plan because it doesn't necessarily refer only to CDBG funds. It refers to a consolidation of funding sources and the goals we want to accomplish for low-income residents of West Sacramento and improvements in low-income neighborhoods. So it will look at an overall goal, not just what we're going to do with CDBG funds. The annual action plan is the other way around. It only refers to the CDBG funding that we get for a particular year. It says within the context of these 5-year goals, we have, X amount of money this year, and here's where it's going to go.
Right, and then the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report would be a system-wide evaluation.
The CAPER is an annual report that we send to HUD saying, you gave us this money last year, and here's what we did with it.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks.
All right, any other comments or questions? Entertain a motion.
I will move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Johannesson, seconded by Mr. Ledesma. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number...
Ms. Sandine?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
One item, back on number 13.
Right.
Was there a motion
to waive?
Waive?
No. We
Okay.
will
Can we
go
go
back
back
to number
and-
13, and I'll entertain
Sorry.
a motion. I just stated it, proclaimed it, but we need to have a motion to waive the first reading. Is there?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ledesma, seconded by Mr. Johannesson. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that does carry forward, and we will be taking up the second reading and adoption of ordinance 16-1 on February 17th. Thank you. We'll move on to item 15, which is consideration of approval of Resolution 16-16, awarding contract with Solar United Network for installation of photovoltaic systems, and approval of Resolution 16-11, declaring intent to reimburse itself from the proceeds of one or more tax-exempt financing for certain expenditures made and/or to be made in connection with the acquisition, construction, and equipping of certain capital improvements. Hello, good evening.
Hello. Good evening. Last September, the city council heard a feasibility study on the ability to expand alternative energy generation at various city facilities. And at that time, the city council gave direction to staff to return with you go out and do bids and return with a contractor to install photovoltaic systems at 5 different city facilities. That would be City Hall, the Central and Bridge District water tanks, and then fire stations 44 and 45. So in essence, that's what we're doing tonight. We're coming back to you to recommend entering into a contract with Solar United Network, AKA Sunworks as we call them. And so, after the council's direction, staff did go through a RFP process. Sunworks was the highest ranked responsive bidder in that effort. And so what you have is Resolution 1616, which would authorize the city manager to execute and enter into a contract with Sunworks. In addition, 1616 includes some other findings related to CEQA and some issues related to the type of contract that will be used for that effort. I would note that one of the city facilities was dropped from the list of facilities where we'd be installing photovoltaic, and that's Fire Station 44. And when the bids came back, Fire Station 44 just didn't look like a feasible alternative. Again, we do have our consultant here tonight, Russell Driver from ARC Alternative, who can answer any questions you might have about why that was, or any other issues about the installation of facilities. But another action that we're going to ask tonight is for you to approve the financing. So we went out and we actually solicited quite a few proposals from bank lenders, and we came back with a successful bid from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and they gave us a really good rate, and it really justified going out and being competitive with those bids. And so we're going to ask that you allow us to enter into those financing documents. It would be a 15-year term, the interest rate 2.69%, which is very good. And the real point here is that not only is this good in terms of the use of alternative energy, but it's going to result in energy savings to the city over 25 years of over $4 million. So even with the financing, it works out to be a very good deal for the city. So anyway, we would just ask you to approve the two resolutions tonight. I'm not going to go through the report and all the details. They're in front of you. But if you have any questions, I can answer them. Or again, Russell Driver here to help with that.
Thank you, Mr. Blumberg. Any questions? Okay, Mr. Johannesson. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, the budget, 3.8 million plus, includes a maintenance agreement, and so that would be for the 15-year term or for 25 years?
Well, let me just say that we're still negotiating on the O&M agreement. That is not in your package tonight. We're trying to figure out whether we want to go with a shorter term, actually, than the life of the financing or the life of the improvements. And so that would be coming back to you on February 17th. But all I can say right now is that contract is being negotiated, and there's some advantages, and disadvantages of going out longer. And a lot of that relates to the fact that you have technology changing.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, you could pay for maintenance of solar panels, and then there's a technology out there coming out where you have self-cleaning panels. Do you want to go ahead and pay for, let's say, 10 years of panel cleaning if there's going to be an alternative technology you could implement which would, eliminate that need?
Right, so under this, you're basically, it's a 15-year loan package, and you're looking at amortizing it over 15 years. So the warranties on these panels are usually 25 years, I think.
Yep. I think we have an expert who will answer that one.
Okay.
Yes, the panels are warranted for 25 years, and the expected useful life of the system is closer to 30.
Right, and it starts degrading over time, from my understanding.
Yeah, a little bit every year.
Right. Okay. All right, then, Paul, the issue of, as new technology comes on board, so we purchase a system, so how does that work? And say 10 years from now, before the 15-year loan is amortized, a new technology comes out where they're maybe 100% more efficient.
Well, again, what we're looking at is the useful life of the improvements, and so there would really be no reason to change out the technology per se. It's a really good system from what we understand, and we hope to get the 30-year useful life. When I referenced, potential changes, it may relate to things like maintenance and maybe some slight upgrades to the system,
Got it.
but not replacing the system in its entirety.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, thank you for that.
Mr. Christoph?
Paul, sort of along the same lines. I see where this is going to be a 15-year loan, and it's for $3.8 million. And we project that the net savings over 25 years would be 4.6. So why is there two different terms, 15-year, 25-year? I didn't quite get that when I read through the agenda item.
Easy answer on that one. You know, the banks are very reluctant to go out longer than 15 years. In fact, you know, of the 48 banks we solicited, most of them turned us down because they don't want to go out beyond 10 years. And so many of them don't even want to go 10 years with these types of improvements. So 15 was really the maximum we could get a lender to look at.
Okay. And so how much of a savings would we incur in 15 years?
I haven't done that estimate, but I can tell you this. Right now, it looks like, you know, going out 15 years will minimize the amount of, let's say, general fund support you need in the first 8 years to make the debt service payments. So in other words, the savings should almost completely pay for the debt service, and then it turns positive in year 9. And I haven't calculated what it would be between 9 through 15. But, you know, after year 15, it's just pure savings.
Okay, when you come back with this, I think you're going to come back with this.
In 2 weeks.
In 2
Yes,
weeks, yeah. Could you have that figure for me?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you.
Ledesma?
No, thank you for the questions to my two colleagues, as Mr. Hannison asked the one I was a bit after. But on the, just as a matter of, on the resolution regarding, there's two resolutions. One is to actually go into contract, and the second one is around the financing. So is on the financing, I mean, I guess what I'm after is that if things change between now and then and exceeds, I think, $4 million is the kind of top level that will come back to us, right?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's some,
Yeah.
yeah, because I agree with you on your point about the 15 years. I also am aware of the current trend or the current environment for interest rates too. So I'm just being watchful of that and making sure we have a kind of a stopgap in case it goes away. But I have no problem with it. I think it's a good process, because you did get bids from both sides, the financing and the contractor for it. So I'm pleased with where we are, and hopefully we can move this forward.
And I'll add, I'm pleased we're moving forward with this project, and that you did go through the process. That sounds quite laborious, but I think for us, it's important that you do look deeply at the options that you can bring forward, and this is the best one that you're bringing forward to us tonight. And I think it'll be good for us to be using solar energy.
That's great.
So with that, any other comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion for this item.
I'll move the item.
Moved by Mr. Ledesma,
Ms. Vanessa, can I?
seconded
can
by
I
Mr.
confirm
Christoph.
That it is the amended resolution?
The amended
that was
resolution,
attached to
we
the staff?
had an amendment that was put at the desks.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of the amended item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Blumberg. That moves us on to item number 16, which is consideration of Resolution 16-18 for exception of the 180-day wait period for hiring a retiree as a temporary extra help employee. And Mr. Wright,
Good evening.
good evening.
So this is on the regular agenda because our friends at CalPERS require that we do this on a regular agenda. If we bring back a retired annuitant prior to their 6 months within the 6 months after they've retired. You have to have it on a regular agenda, and you have to articulate that the person has expertise that the city needs. So obviously, everybody here knows that Carol Richardson's been involved in our early learning program since day one, before it was even started, was intimately involved with it the entire time that she was here, really in leading staff. And as the council remembers in the budget, we talked about the fact that there's some funding challenges in fiscal year 16-17 that she was working with staff on, coming up with solutions. And so we're here to ask that we bring her back for a couple of months, working 20 hours a week with our staff to come up with the funding plan and options that we would then bring forward during the regular mid-term budget adjustment period. So with that, I'll answer any questions the council may have.
Any question for Mr. Wright?
If I may, I have absolutely no problem with the recommendation. I just would make sure, I understand your point about we have to do this because it's required by CalPERS, but there's a reason it is, right?
Absolutely.
There's a reason that staff has asked to come back and get a recommendation for this so that we're not just allowing folks to come back in and just to keep the public trust. So I would also ask to make sure there is a justification warranted. And again, I haven't, the person we're talking about will do the job, and I'm confident in that. But it's important in the staff report to lay out the justification that there is a budgeting issue, the work is required, and that you verbalize that, and we just had a briefing on that, so I knew, but for the public's perspective, somebody reading this, I just want to make sure if we had to do this again in a future date, that we just kind of make sure that's understood too in the staff report for the public. That's
Yeah.
all.
And I wasn't trying to make light of the process at all.
I understand.
Simply that why this would normally sort of look like it would be on a consent agenda, but it's not for the reasons that you've articulated. The public needs to know we're not bringing somebody back just because we like them or.
That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledesma. Mr. Janice,
Just tell Carol.
Mr. Christoph.
Well, I get to be your boss now. That's
All right.
that's really exciting.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, good luck on that.
Mr. Johannesson?
Yeah, I just think, the person that we're bringing back has such amount of institutional memory, and it's really going to be a cost benefit to the city to, rather than have everybody start from scratch, and so there is a benefit in this particular case.
And I mentioned her earlier in the Up for West Sac report that, and we really do need to be looking at long-term financing, and she does have the background. So I'm supportive of this moving forward. Is there a motion? on that? Mr. Johannesson moves,
Second.
and Mr. Christoph seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That brings us on to item number 17. We'll start with council calendar. Ms. Berlin?
Good evening,
Good evening.
council members and Mayor Pro Tem. So just a couple of items on the calendar that might be of interest to you. On Wednesday, the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District meeting scheduled for February 10th at 9 a.m. That's been canceled.
Okay.
And the Successor Agency Oversight Board meeting, that's also been canceled.
On February 11th?
On February 11th.
Okay.
And the last thing, on February 25th, at the LAFCO meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. in Woodland, there's going to be a LAFCO Shared Services Workshop that electeds have been invited to participate in to develop a list of priority projects for shared services for the next fiscal year. So,
Does that get noticed? Does that item get noticed if we're all invited?
yes,
Okay.
the invitation indicated that if
That's
there's
right.
going to be Brown
Okay.
Act issues, they can work with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I may for just a moment, just to.
Yeah, Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, I just need to notify staff and council that we have a March 2nd city council meeting scheduled. I will not be in attendance at that meeting. Just want to make sure staff was aware of that. That's all at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Ledesma. That brings us on to 17B, the city manager report.
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, just briefly, your desk was a short summary by Holland Knight on our successful trip to Washington, January 19th to 21st, including the meetings with FTA and the Corps.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. City Attorney report. Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow during the meeting. I appreciate that. Staff direction from council members. And agenda item requests by council members. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Moved by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Christoph. All those approve by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.